Hey there, folks. I'm Meteorologist Matt Barrentine. Here we are going into the later part of September, and it's been quite the season so far in the tropics. Here we are, the current tropical outlook here, and we do have a new named storm. Gabrielle is on the board, and we got another tropical wave out there behind Gabrielle as well that may eventually develop, but it's pretty low end. Once again, we do have Gabrielle out there, so we finally got another named storm. The reason why it's been a struggle so far this season to get these storms kicked up and get into gear is because we've had a lot of wind shear across the tropical Atlantic and a lot of Saharan dust, and that's really limited on what we call the main development region here of the Atlantic, and that's why we just haven't seen all that many storms. In fact, with Gabrielle on the board now, that's been 7 so far on the season, only one of which, Aaron, became a hurricane. Now, there's a good chance that Gabrielle becomes a hurricane too. And Aaron, remember, Aaron was out in the middle of the Atlantic just like Gabrielle is, so didn't impact anything. Gabrielle is likely to stay pretty far out there too. So we've only had 7 storms here on the board. And in September, been unusual. We haven't seen a whole lot of activity so far this month. You can see usually the whole tropical basin is pretty much open for business in September. That's generally how things work. But this year, because of that wind shear, because of the dust, we just haven't seen this. So this is September. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead into October because we're only a couple weeks away from there. And how do things shift in October? Well, where storms develop really does shift completely. Instead of being out here in the Atlantic, generally we're talking more in the southern Gulf or into the western part of the Caribbean. That is where, in general, more storms form in October. And that could be a big problem because we haven't had any storms there so far this year. So that has allowed the water temperatures to just climb and climb and climb. And I don't mean just the water temperatures at the surface of the ocean. Going deep down, hundreds of feet, where we've been seeing near record, what we call heat content. So this isn't just about the temperatures at the surface. This is the water column going down hundreds of feet. And when a storm goes over water, you know, obviously it needs that warm water for fuel. But if there's warm water at the top and then cooler water down below, it stirs that cooler water up, and that generally will hamper storms. But if it stirs up the water and just more warm water just keeps coming up, then storms can intensify rapidly. And that's really what we're talking about here. This is rocket fuel. And look where it's at, right where we see in October many storms form. And we don't have to go back too far to think of one that became a very large storm, formed right in that area, and then came right up at the northern Gulf Coast. And of course, I'm talking about Hurricane Michael back in 2018 that eventually had 160 mile per hour winds. Think about that. This formed right here off of the Cozumel area down the Yucatan of Mexico, and it got up to Category 5 strength as it crossed the Gulf of Mexico, and didn't take all that long to do so. It had 160 mile per hour winds, 74 deaths attributed to Hurricane Michael back in 2018. Now, I'm not saying, obviously, that there's necessarily going to be a storm like Michael this season. I'm just letting you know that the fuel is there for storms like this, so we cannot fall asleep on this hurricane season. All it would take is one storm tapping into that fuel, becoming a very large storm heading up our way to do a lot of damage. So we're going to definitely keep an eye on this hurricane season. It is not over yet. Once again, I'm meteorologist Matt Barrentine. Thank you so much for joining us here on Fox 10. Bye now.